Hey everyone, I just wanted to hop in here before this week's episode. We're a little out of our normal schedule. If you hadn't heard, there was a hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast, Hurricane Ida, and Father Brad is down in Louisiana. Now he's totally fine, his parish is fine, his people in his circles are all right, but he and the other priests of the diocese have naturally been really busy just helping out everyone else who wasn't so lucky. I mean, he was sending me pictures of some of the devastation that's going on down there, and he's out there with the Knights of Columbus sawing up trees and serving jambalaya to all the other volunteers. So we weren't able to record this week, but we still want to share an episode with you. We're going to go into our back catalog a little bit and share an episode with you that we recorded, I think, before the podcast even went public, when we were still kind of experimenting with different ideas and stuff. So in this episode, just want to give you a heads up, you'll hear some new voices, and the audio quality, frankly, isn't top-notch. It's not up to our normal standards, but again, we were still trying to figure out our production process. So we ask you to just be a little patient with it. The question we got was still a really good question, and it's one that's absolutely worth hearing. We had planned to maybe re-record it because it's worth getting out to you guys. But since we have this little gap with Father's situation down in Louisiana, we figured let's just share the one we've already got. And I just ask you to join me and keep praying for the folks down in Louisiana and everywhere else that's affected by the hurricane and the floods that have been happening in the last couple of weeks. So I hope you enjoy, and on to the episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Catholic Coffee Talk, a podcast where in between sips, your Catholic questions are answered. I'm your host, Father Brad Doyle, and I have with me our resident good Catholics, Peter Gone, and not Alex Mersch. He backed out and he left us. I think he's got a date or something. Isn't that what's happening?
I think so. Yeah, I heard
Probably,
a rumor.
yeah.
But the other voice you just heard was Sarah Summa, the best Sarah we all know, namely because Summa means the best. Sarah, how you doing? I'm glad you can join me and Peter.
Doing well. Excited to be here.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Cool. You ready to talk about moral and material cooperation with evil and tell people what they should and shouldn't do?
Sure.
Oh, you didn't prepare? Because I didn't know.
I didn't know I was going to be here until about 10 minutes ago.
No. Sarah is filling in Alex's position as the producer, so she might pop her voice in here and there, give a feminine perspective maybe, but we are going to, today's episode is kind of nuptial. There's a lot of wedding questions, and so I've been having a lot of weddings. I love weddings. So for my banter, I wanted to ask everyone here what their favorite wedding song is. Like, what's the song that when it comes on, you get down? You have to like stop your conversation where you're at, you're like, oh, I'm talking to Aunt Susie that I haven't seen in a long time. Sorry, Aunt Susie, I got to get to the dance floor because my jam just went on. What's your song?
For me, at least, that's actually a really hard question to answer. In the year that Sarah and I, my wife's name is Sarah. This is a common confusion
Not
here in the
me.
office.
Your Sarah is the best Sarah for you.
Correct.
This Sarah is Summa.
Okay. Anyway, so then in the year that my wife and I got married, I think we went to 9 or 10 weddings or something. There was this 3-year period where just all of our friends were getting married, and there was this traveling group of people, there's like college friends, who were all at the same wedding. And so for a year, it seemed like every 6 weeks we were all getting together and just having a crazy dance party. And so
that's really fun.
It was a blast.
Yeah, awesome.
I remember my brother at our wedding, when he saw this giant like conglomeration of Catholic U alums just going crazy on the dance floor, he was like, wow.
Yeah, that's almost like, you see movies where they have a wedding and then everyone busts out into a choreographed dance, and you're like, yeah, when did they learn this choreographed dance randomly? But y'all could have done it.
Kind of kept happening, yeah. And there were just weird traditions that grew up like in those 2 years with certain songs, like Wagon Wheel or Shut Up and Dance With Me. I don't remember that.
I don't know.
I forget. But just certain weird things we would all do as a group, and they didn't really have meanings, and they all kind of just didn't. It was with college friends, but it wasn't like dating back to college. It wasn't things we used to do in college. It was just this weird moment that happened over and over again. So this is a long list, but it was all kind of within the realm of like classic white person weddings, like 80s, and stuff like that.
So
So
play
full disclosure.
Play some
Yeah, Mr.
funky music,
Brightside.
white boy.
Yeah.
Sarah, what is your go-to song?
Okay, when you were asking the question, I thought you were asking about like mass songs. So then I was
Oh,
like, oh, Ave Maria. And then you were like, when you get down. And I was like, oh, that's not what you meant. I'm a sucker for like the Cupid Shuffle or what's the other one?
that's a Louisiana song.
Really?
He's from the Cupid is from Lafayette, Louisiana.
Oh,
Right.
cool. Yeah, those other ones are like, right foot stomp, left foot stomp.
Okay.
Get everyone out there,
Yeah,
you like to be told what to do.
We put those on the
I'm
do
good
not
at following
playlist.
instructions. Yeah.
Put those on our do not playlist.
Oh no.
Not gonna lie.
Yeah, mine is always Superstition. Stevie Wonder. Yeah, it's got that like the drum kick going in, and then the harpsichord sound, and it's just laid back and funky. It gets everyone on the dance floor. I love wedding receptions, and I would like to point out that Jesus, his first miracle, everyone says it happened at a wedding, but really, I think it happened at a wedding reception.
Yeah, I think that's
Probably.
fair.
It was the parting. I mean, it was kind of all one thing, but it's a 7-day thing, and they were towards the end of it. So I think the marriage had already happened, like the vows or what have you. But the wedding reception was where Jesus turned the water into wine. So make your wedding receptions holy and fun.
There you go.
And not like northern wedding receptions, which are lame. I'm just joking. There is a difference between southern and northern. We're not going to get into it. We don't have the time. But anyway, in the South, we don't sit down and eat. We just stand up and eat so we can dance quicker.
That's so true. Yeah.
It is legit. It is legit. Anyway, I think it's time for What's Percolating.
At Catholic Coffee, our faith informs everything we do. Like Jesus, we strive to do all things well, so we can deliver a great cup of coffee from our family to yours. We at Catholic Coffee use only fresh, ethically sourced beans and do all of our roasting in small batches by hand right here in the USA. We work hard to craft delicious coffee presented in beautiful packaging that will bring beauty to your home and a prayer to your lips each time you brew a fresh pot. We also donate a portion of each sale to reputable and effective Catholic charities here in the U.S. So this is a purchase you can feel good about. For a limited time, Catholic Coffee is offering 10% off for listeners. Use code COFFEETALK at checkout to get 10% off your order of popular flavors like Our Lady of Guadalupe Mexican Mocha or the St. Michael Dark Roast. That's CatholicCoffee.com. Use code COFFEETALK.
What's Percolating is our section of this podcast where the questions percolating in your head get answers from the church's tradition and also application when it comes to this, because this isn't just like a ancient question. It's kind of maybe a newer question that we apply the church's morality to and her ethics.
Yeah, this isn't just a what question. This is a how question.
Exactly. And it might be a harder question to answer. And I'm not necessarily going to be perfect. I think we should always start off with that like if we say an answer and it's not exactly succinct or perfect, it's okay. We're human, we're fallen, especially Alex. And I'll say that because he's not here and he can't hear me say that. But so we're doing our best. But there is clear teaching on formal and material cooperation. We'll get to that in a second. Here's the question. Anonymous wrote me, I'm a Catholic from Pennsylvania. I was wondering if you could answer my question. I just applied for a part-time banquet server catering job where I would mostly be serving weddings. I have a couple questions about this. One, if the wedding I serve is invalid in the eyes of the church and I'm working it, would I be committing assent? I wouldn't really know if it was invalid, though, because I would be just serving the reception part and I won't know the people personally. So this info would kind of be hard to find. I love this person is very detailed. I love it. And two, if I show up to work and it turns out the wedding reception is for a gay couple, should I go home and not serve that wedding? Should I quit? I'm fine with doing that, but is it okay to work there until that happens, if it even does? Thanks. Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
detailed question, very important and seemingly controversial. But it all comes down to the distinction between formal and material cooperation with evil. Have either of y'all have heard that, right? The terms.
Yeah, I know the terms. I know this is something I'll say right now that I don't know much about. I actually had to talk to a friend of mine recently because of a situation where I wasn't sure. I'm like, is this okay? And he's like, oh no, that's definitely formal cooperation with evil. So I was like, oh, good to know. Glad I asked. So this is something that I don't know a lot about, but I do know that there's a certain well, the question really is what it sounds like. It's whether or not we are cooperating with an evil action in a given moment.
Yeah, and that there's different gradations
there's
of
different levels
cooperation,
of it.
right? And so there's some that might be permissible and some that absolutely aren't. And so that's the difference between formal and material. And even the materials split up into two. So right off the jump, I want to say that evil. So any kind of cooperation with evil is not desirable. That's not the ideal. Like evil is bad and cooperating is involved. And so it's never good to do an evil, and it's never good to cooperate formally with an evil. Okay, so we're not. What's the philosophy that says that like you can do evils as long as a good comes out of it?
Well, there's probably a lot of them. Utilitarianism.
Utilitarianism.
Yeah,
Bam, you're good.
Consequentialism, where the consequences are all that matter, right? As long as there's a good end.
You know what? CUA. Good job. You did a good job. He's patting himself on the back. Okay, yeah. So utilitarianism is a philosophy. It's a bad philosophy that says the ends justify the means, right? So like we're trying to get the best end, and it doesn't matter how we get there, like right. And so, but that's not how we believe as Catholics. That's not our Catholic tradition and it's not according to natural law. It's not good, right? So we cannot do an evil qua evil and cooperate it with formally. So what is formal cooperation? When the person cooperating with the evil shares the intention of the one doing the evil action. So that's a formal cooperation. You want to participate in this action. Right? And so an example would be, and I'm going to use all the examples I use are going to be around this kind of thing, like weddings and illicit weddings and things like that. So being a minister who witnesses the attempted vows of a same-sex couple, right? That would be formal cooperation because you're choosing and desiring to be there and ostensibly supporting this decision.
Right. You
So
make
that
it
would
a necessary part of that action.
And it's like your will. You want to do
Yeah,
that.
you're choosing.
Right? So that would be formal cooperation. Can't do it. Okay. And that it's interesting because the CDF just came out with a document that clarified, which I don't necessarily know why we need clarification, but it's always good to have clarification.
Right.
That Catholic priests and deacons and anyone in a Catholic church cannot officiate or attempt to officiate vows between a same-sex couple. Really, because marriage is between a man and a woman, so it would be that's why I keep saying attempted marriage because or attempted vows. So that just was clarified. So okay, we can't do that. What's material cooperation with evil? And I'll add this other word: immediate material cooperation. Okay, this is when the person cooperating does not approve of the evil action and does not want it to occur, but participates in the execution of the evil action itself. Okay, so this is also can never be done, and it's gravely evil unless someone's in like dire distress, right? So they're kind of forced into it, or they feel like this great burden. Okay,
So if your will is somehow compromised in some way.
Yeah, or there's just some external. Yeah, there's an external pressure or discernment that that might mitigate your culpability. So, so an example I came up with is being a parent whose child is simulating a marriage. I've, the ideal is to not participate in any kind of weddings that might be same-sex couples. But there's some people who have, like, they feel this pressure, this family pressure, and they're weighing like their children and their children are going to be completely, they're going to isolate them, and so they might attend the wedding, which isn't good. It's not good. We shouldn't do it, right? As a Catholic, we're called not to participate in a simulated wedding between a same-sex couple. But someone's culpability might be lessened because of like an external pressure. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so. And then there's immediate cooperation with evil. So immediate material cooperation. So material, you don't want it to happen, but the immediate is how close you are to the situation. So immediate is when the person cooperating does not approve of the evil action and does not want it to occur, but participates indirectly or in an unessential aspect of the evil action. And I would see this in my interpretation of all these, like formal, immediate. I would see this as possibly being an employee of a caterer who provides the space for a reception. All right, or let's say like a baker. This happens all the time, right? This comes into the news because people cancel bakeries that do not participate in certain events, and photographers. It happens around weddings a lot for some reason. Florists, but you don't always know what you're providing services for, right? Right. And so, and as an employee of a caterer or a baker or something, you're not making the decision to engage in a relationship with this event, right? And so, and ostensibly, you're not part of like the ceremony, right? You might be part of a party or a celebration of some sort. So I want to be clear here. No one is obliged to participate in evil ever. Right? There's great examples of virtue of people who risk a lot to follow their conscience. And so there's people who say, no, I am not going to participate in this situation,
right?
This evil, and they risk a lot, and that's good. Like there's saints are made by people who risk their jobs and their livelihoods and even relationships with family members to follow their conscience. But it's also the case that it would be nearly impossible to completely avoid immediate cooperation with evil in today's world.
Sorry, you said immediate or immediate?
Material cooperation is what I meant. Sorry. Oh, sorry. It's nearly impossible to completely avoid material cooperation. And I think that's important to note, because I think there's people who want to convince themselves that they can completely separate themselves from evil. But if you live in the world, you're going to materially cooperate with evil, even if you don't know it.
Can you give an example of how? Like, what do you mean by that? Why is it so difficult?
Because the world's economy is so intertwined, and it's the other side of the coin of the body of Christ. Like our lives are so intertwined, right, that our sinfulness affects other people's, and it draws people into that, and we don't know all the time where our money's going, right? What this organization's giving to this, and what they decide to do with the services we provide. So another example would be like an internet provider. You work for Cox Cable in Louisiana, and you're providing internet, and that some people are going to use that internet for nefarious purposes.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a material cooperation with evil. It's immediate. It's not immediate, and it's not formal. You don't want them to look up pornography, right? You don't like participate in that action,
right?
But you are at least materially connected to that action.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean you can't have an internet providing company? No, that's not where the church stands. Do you see how this is playing out? Or a liquor store owner or a bartender?
Yeah, for sure.
There's ways in which a bartender can formally cooperate with evil, which is bad. They
Yeah.
know they're over serving somebody and they choose to do it and they want to do it. They're like, oh, let's take shots. Woo!
Yeah.
There's ways in which a bartender can immediately cooperate in evil. They don't know they're over serving, and someone goes and drives when they shouldn't, and they get into a car wreck and someone dies. Like, that's really horrible situation. But does that mean there shouldn't be restaurants and bars? Alcohol should be illegal? Should we go to prohibition? No, I don't think that's where the church would go. Or here's another example: a bus driver whose his route is one of the stops is close to a Planned Parenthood. He knows in this bus he's probably driving people at some point in his working career. They're going to get off, and he's going to let them off, and they're going to have an abortion. But that's immediate cooperation with evil,
Okay.
not formal. Formal would be if your friend asked, "Hey, can you drive me to the abortion clinic because I want
Yes.
abortion?" That's hard, huh?
Yeah, it's tough.
What are y'all thinking?
I'm thinking about parents, which is different, I guess, than working at the catering company, but or as myself as like a bridesmaid in a wedding.
Mm-hmm.
What weddings can I be a part of? And what?
Yeah. Okay, so that's a good question. Let's answer that. I think that standing in a wedding holds more moral weight, right? Because the very act of standing in a wedding and being a bridesmaid is like, I am publicly assenting to this union. So let's say that comes into play with even like illicit marriages might be illicit. So someone's married, they're Catholic, they got married in the church, they got divorced, they did not receive an annulment, but they're remarrying. That's a public situation in which ostensibly we respect someone's ability to get married. So that person's already married. I would believe that your conscience and the situation would say that a Catholic cannot stand in that wedding. And that's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, that could be pretty brutal.
Yeah. Um,
Doesn't
with
make
a-
it right, but it's a hard situation to be in.
This is where saints are made, right? This is where saints are made.
I've known people in that situation, and
I've heard a priest one time. Someone asked him, I guess his brother was getting married outside of the church, and they grew up Catholic, and the priest kind of advised him that it was okay for his family to go to this wedding because they're still committing to each other. They're still choosing that commitment over just, I guess, living together or some other lifestyle. Can that help? I don't know.
Yeah, I've got that question myself. Like, what about, I don't know what we could label secular marriages, where it's man and woman, they're committing for life, even if they aren't living what the Catholic Church would call a perfectly moral relationship up to that point, but they sort of check all the other boxes, so to speak, with the exception of the blessing of the church.
Yeah, I think the main thing with these situations is that the possibility of scandal should be avoided at all possibility or at all costs. So like standing in a wedding is publicly saying that I desire this thing to happen, right? So that would be more of a formal cooperation because you were cooperating. The person is cooperating and shares the intention of the one doing the evil action. And while there is natural marriage, a Catholic who is married and then gets civilly divorced and attempts to remarry, that's not even a natural marriage because they're already married.
Right.
And so we can attend natural marriages. We can attend sacramental marriages between two Protestants. We can attend marriages between a Protestant and a Catholic. But we cannot formally cooperate with somebody who's attempting to simulate a marriage, even though they are already married.
Yeah. Okay. For someone who's working in contrast or against the sacrament in some way.
Because ultimately, do we believe, what were you going to say, Sarah?
I was going to say, for my own clarity, what if it's Protestant friends that were never Catholic, they're just Protestant? Can you stand in those weddings?
And let's say they haven't been married before?
Yeah, they've never been married. They're just Protestant marriages.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can, because that because
it's still objectively a good thing for them to get married and to commit.
Yeah.
and it's even sacramental.
Mhm.
So because the church, the priest isn't the one who marries somebody, we kind of use it in shorthand. I say like, oh yeah, I married them. It's kind of confusing because they're like, what? I thought you're a
Yeah.
priest. I'm like, no,
You witnessed it and you blessed
yeah,
it.
I witnessed their marriage. That's the correct term. I witnessed their marriage because they actually are the ministers of the sacrament. And the only thing you need to be the minister of the sacrament of marriage is two baptized Christians. So if two baptized Christians, even if they're Protestant, make a vow to each other and they understand what marriage is, right? Full, total, faithful, fruitful, all these aspects of it. Then that is a sacramental marriage, and it's good. You should go to that. So you can stand in that. Um, it gets even more confusing, and I don't know if I want to go there. If like you have a Protestant friend who isn't like doesn't have like a understanding of like Catholic canon law or even Catholic theology of marriage, and they get divorced, and then they're going to get remarried, but they don't have an annulment, but they have no even canonical access to annulment or
Right.
recognition because their church doesn't have the authority to recognize that. I'm not even going to go there. I'm sorry. You're just going to have to figure it out.
At a certain level, it feels like you have to follow your conscience.
Yeah, I don't know. But
Inform your conscience, and then
I gave you enough
the
to
best of your
die
ability.
martyrs already. You have enough to be martyrs right now with what we've talked about. But let's go back to Anonymous's question.
Yes.
Uh, from my interpretation of formal, material, immediate, and immediate cooperation, um, I, I think you may morally work for a catering company who may possibly be requesting you at some point to work a reception for either an illicit marriage, which, again, like she said, you wouldn't be able to know that. You're not going to,
Right.
every wedding you work, be like, can I have the baptismal records for the, like, that's like, you're a server. You're not going to do that. Or simulated homosexual union. But it may be easier to find a job that does not place yourself in such a situation. Like there might be jobs that, because they're going to require us so often to kind of maybe go against our conscience,
Mhm.
we might not be able to do those jobs, But I think you can, to an extent, but maybe it's going to be just too much trouble down the line. My friend Dr. Brad Fossier, he was in school to be a doctor, and he was going down the route to be an OBGYN. And at some point he said, I don't know if he was going to follow the church's teaching, but he didn't know if his practice would succeed. Now, I think there's really great OBs that are Catholic and don't prescribe birth control and do everything right according to the natural law and the moral law of the church. But it's just really hard. So he's like, I'm going to be a family practitioner, go get a farm out in the wilderness, have a lot of kids, raise goats and chickens, and not have the headache.
Well.
And that was a good decision for him.
Yeah, I think Anonymous in their question kind of pointed out that it wouldn't be that big of a deal for them to get another job. I don't know how they worded it, but
yeah, they were fine with getting another job. I just think you could possibly morally work there, even if there might be imperfect situations you're asked to work for, because you're not an essential. You're not like the minister. You're not standing in the wedding, and it's even just like most of the time it's just a party celebrating something. It's not like the ceremony itself.
yeah.
You're like providing the chicken tenders.
Crucial.
Maybe I'm wrong, and there's a moral theologian out there who's going to be like, Father Bragg, you heretic! Ah! And look, my desire is not to be. I want to be a faithful son of the church, and so if my interpretation of this is not wrong, just go in the comm boxes and blast me, blow me up.
Let us know.
So anyway, any other comments or questions, Sarah or Peter?
I just think that this is a great question. And I think it's one that, while many of us are not involved at all in weddings or the wedding industry, I just think it's a pertinent question, because I think we're going to run into more and more of these kinds of situations as time goes on, and not just in terms of marriages, but just in other issues. Like you said with the doctor, I think there are going to be increasingly more places where it becomes difficult to live out the church's teaching and to live according to one's conscience.
Yeah, and I do think there might be a situation. Let's say, so this is like someone who works for a caterer, but let's say if you are the caterer, or you are the baker who owns the bakery, or you are the person who owns the photo booth, right? Um, I got into a conversation once with someone who I knew growing up who owns a photo booth, and they personally were, talking about their conscience, and we talked about situations like this, and he said, if I came out with a stance and didn't serve each individual wedding that came to me because of some moral issue I had, so like a same-sex couple wants a photo booth, they ask me, I say, no, I'm so sorry, I won't be able to, and they push it and they ask why, and he says, my conscience. He said that he would be blown up. They would be basically be doxxed,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
and which happens. And I said, well, that might be what you need to do. Like that might be your martyrdom. We're not dying in the Colosseum, but your business might just die, which at least we get to walk away from it. But I I do believe that as Catholics, like our faith needs to live into our jobs as well and our businesses. So it's not like this differentiation. This is my job. This is my work, and then over here, this is my faith. It needs to be both.
Definitely. Definitely. So I just want to thank Anonymous for sending this question in, because it's, again, relevant. I think it's relevant to us all.
Yep. Well, after that, I think we need a pick me up. What do you think?
Amen.
Okay. This is Bean of the Week. We all need a little pick me up. Here's ours. Well, speaking of marriages and weddings, I want to shout out, and you can put it in the show notes. So Sarah put it in the show notes at the bottom of the show. Okay.
I'll tell Alex to put it in the show notes.
Oh, wow.
I'll probably be the one to do it anyway.
I love how Sarah's like, I get all the glory. I'm coming on the show, but Alex, do all the work.
Yeah.
So Alex, put in the show notes. I have a Spotify marriage playlist. So I made a playlist that I, text to my couples after the first meeting that we have usually, or I put it in my little documents, and they can look it up. It is called, really quick, I forgot what it's called. My playlist. It's called Marriage Prep. In the cover art is and my name is, or my title, or what do you call it? My handle on Spotify is B Doyle. Yeah, B Doyle 109. B Doyle 109 is 25 songs. They got some Josh Garrels in there, some Johnny Swim, some Oh Hellos, Andrew Peterson, good stuff. John Mayer, love is a verb. It ain't a thing. It's not something you hold. It's not something you scream.
So are these good songs about love? Is that?
Yeah, these are songs that in different ways, I think, kind of expound upon virtues that we need when we're entering in vocations, but particularly marriage. So like Love is a Verb by John Mayer is about how like love is a choice. It's part of the will. It's not some kind of,
not just a feeling.
It's not just a feeling, which is fantastic. John Mayer is brilliant when he comes to writing songs. I don't know if he lives it or not, but he wrote a great song.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
I'd strive to not know actually about artists. I figure the less I know about them, the more I can just.
I've heard he's gotten better. I don't know. Haven't asked.
That's true. The most intense one is this song called "Duet" by Penny and Sparrow, which is like, woo, it's saucy.
Yeah.
It's intense,
but
spicy.
It is.
It's spicy.
Word for it. But it's
I can't. Yeah, it's a beautiful song. It's about the weight. Yeah. Well, what it does is it's sexually explicit. Do you know what that means?
Yeah, I know what that means.
Sarah's like, no, I don't. Well, you do know what it means, but most people don't think of it correctly, because you know how like a lot of albums will have sexually explicit at the bottom of the album. It's like parental advisory, sexually explicit. It's like, no, those albums usually aren't very explicit about what sex is. Like explicit means clear, like clearly defining something, being explicit about it. And usually those are confusing albums. Well, Penny and Sparrow, this song is about marital sexuality, but it's explicit about it, and it's clear about its meaning and its weight, and that it's connected to not just like, it's not just about genitals, it's about the heart and about bearing each other's wounds and burdens and family and the fruit
Right.
of marriage. Oh, it's so good.
It is good.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
I almost actually picked Penny and Sparrow for my Bean of the Week because I've been returning to I discovered them years ago, and then kind of returned to listening to them this week, and it's been good. But that's not actually my Bean of the Week. It's not my pick me up.
Peter.
I had one. I couldn't remember.
Oh, it's right here. It says the rosary.
Oh no! So my pick me up this week was just celebrating Easter with some friends of mine. We have kind of an informal Bible study, but this past week we decided just to not do that and have a really intentional like Easter feast.
Ooh.
And so we just did some grilling. We all kind of brought different things for this big meal we all shared.
Did you bake fish?
What's that? We did not bake fish over a charcoal fire.
That would have been cool.
That would have been
because Jesus is like, do you have any baked fish? Do you have any food? Here's some baked fish.
No, we baked and grilled a lot of beef and bacon in about 6 different forms, I think. Yeah, and then we just had some good ciders and some good beers and talked about some really heavy but really good stuff. So yeah, just celebrating Easter and feasting in a really intentional way that was really wholesome and just was good bonds of friendship. Frankly, that was my pick me up. That was my that's what lifted my soul this week.
Stay tuned. Okay, guys. Well, you've been listening to Catholic Coffee Talk with me, Father Brad, and our resident good Catholics, Sarah Suma.
How could you forget?
I don't know. I forgot.
The best.
And Peter Gone. Coffee Talk is brought to you by the Catholic Company and is part of the Good Catholic Podcast Cooperative. If this episode has blessed you, you can find more content at www.goodcatholic.com/podcast. As always, we ask you to leave a review, a rating, share the pod with a friend, or simply pray for us in our mission. If you have a question of your own that has been percolating, shoot us an email at askapriest@goodcatholic.com. We'll possibly feature it on a future episode and answer to the best of our ability. To quote the psalmist, taste and see that the Lord is good. Continue to drink deeply from our great faith. We'll talk next time.